Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Andrew Capetta, the manager of collection and exhibition programs at the Cleveland Museum of Art, and I would like to welcome you to today's desktop dialogue. We're going to start in a minute or two and wait for all of you to log in. But use this time to familiarize yourself with the Q&A interface, which should be just to the right of your screen. You can use this anytime during our discussion to make comments or ask questions. If you'd like to include your name, simply type it above the question. There's a space to do that. If you prefer to remain anonymous, you can do that too. We will select some of them to answer and try to respond to as many questions as we can in the allotted time. Please understand if we cannot get to every question, but I always think that's a sign of a good program. We will also use this Q&A section to post links to artworks on CMA's collection online, so you can look closely at them yourself. And we'll also use that space to post additional information and resources that you might find useful. Today's objects are incredibly detailed, so we recommend that you look on Collection Online alongside us if you can. You know, if you prefer to if you see what we're seeing, that's fine too. So for this week's desktop dialogue, we're going to be looking closely at two works of Buddhist devotional art from the 8th century. And we're going to discuss how they resonate with contemporary mindfulness and meditation practices. And at the end of the program, we're going to do some of those practices ourselves too. So it should be really exciting. As a reminder, we're going to answer your questions, the questions from your audience in the middle and at the end of our conversation, but you're welcome to fill that Q&A section as much as you like, just to really kind of keep the conversation going. Now I'd like to introduce this afternoon's guests. First, I'd like to welcome Sonya Rhie Mace, who is the George P. Bickford Curator of Indian and Southeast Asian Art here at the Cleveland Museum of Art. Welcome, Sonya.
Hello, Andrew. So nice to see you.
And I'd also like to welcome Jennifer Bochik, who's a member of CMA's Human Resources team and a meditation instructor who has led classes, meditation classes at CMA. Jen is going to lead us all in a short meditation towards the end of the program, so please stay tuned. Welcome, Jen. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone.
So we're going to now we're going to focus on two objects. The two objects we're going to explore today come from Kashmir, which is a region in the valleys of the Western Himalayas. And it is surrounded by several culturally distinct regions that today straddle a number of contested political borders. And here we have, I think, a map that shows where, kind of Kashmir is. Kashmir was an important center for Buddhism and Buddhist art up until the 13th century. Buddhism originated in South Asia and grew out of the teachings of a prince named Siddhartha Gautama, who lived in the 5th century BCE and achieved enlightenment by making a series of what I like to think of today we would call like life changes, right? And one was a practice that we would now call meditation. And once his practices became popular after his death, he became known as Buddha, which I believe, Sonya, translates to awakened, right, or enlightened one.
That's right, exactly.
Right. So Sonya, let's maybe put the first of our two objects up, which is fasting Buddha.
Yes.
But what do these objects? I know you're going to talk about both of them together, one after the other. What do these objects show about Siddhartha's journey towards enlightenment? What did it involve? What were the sort of steps that he took?
Right. Well, I find this to be one of the most compelling objects in our extraordinary collection of South Asian art at the Cleveland Museum of Art. And it's so easy to miss in the galleries because it's tiny. It's only 4 3/4 inches high. And it shows scenes from the life of Siddhartha, or Shakyamuni Buddha, our historical Buddha. And it shows 3 different scenes in his life between his renunciation from his life of comfort and pleasure that he when he grew up as a prince in a palace, sheltered from all things ugly and evil, and before he actually reached enlightenment and figure out what he considered to be the correct path to a freedom from suffering. Now, what he did was he underwent this series of revelations and that were brought on by kind of a crisis moment where he, for the first time, recognized illness and old age and death. And having seen that, it was such a shock to him that he decided he had to leave his life in the palace and seek a way to end suffering among all beings in the world. And what we see here is at the left of this tiny plaque, one of the paths that he tried. And he gave it his best effort and just decided that that wasn't working for him. But we see him crouching here in this incredibly uncomfortable position. It's a yogic asana, which is a posture, a position that one is supposed to hold for an extended period of time. This is what yoga looked like 2,000 years ago. It was these postures that were designated by a teacher, but you had to hold them for a long time. So it's not like today where we have power yoga flows. You had to hold this for a long time. And this particular posture, he's crouching. The haunch has to be on a heel. The heel has to be off the ground. The head has to be lowered. And the other half leg is in a half lotus or meditation posture. And you see him there in a cave setting. And then in the center is the main image of the plaque, where he is shown seated with both hands resting in the lap in this full lotus posture in this meditation, deep in meditation. And there are a number of different accounts about what he went through during this period. One of them by Ashwagosha from the 3rd century, from a Sanskrit source, talks about how every day he had just one meal where he could have one piece of fruit, one sesamum seed, and one grain of rice, and hence he became completely emaciated. He was starving. So this is why it's called the fasting Buddha, but he's really starving here. And all around him, you see this network of people carved above him. These are tormentors. These are kids and people who came from villages in the surrounding area to try to distract him from his meditations, because he kind of gained a reputation, this guy who sat here and would be undistracted for 6 whole years. And so all of these various people are trying to make him move, trying to make him wake up and get annoyed. After 6 years of this, he realizes this is not working for him, that he should put on some clothes so that he can take care of his body. He should eat some food. And so what we see at the right here is a village girl, the daughter of the local cowherd village chief, bringing him a pot of sweet rice milk. And he is eating for the first time a full meal in 6 years. And it's interesting because this substance is something that women would bring to give offerings to nature divinities to fulfill a wish, usually to have a child. And so it's the food of productivity and success. And so this will result in his attainment of enlightenment that very night. And there are wonderful details here, like under his foot, you see a lotus flower, where a nature divinity is holding a lotus under his foot to show that now he's going to transcend the sufferings of the world. And all the figures underneath are dwellers of the cowherd village, the local cowherds, herdsmen and milkmaids, and you can see the cows there, and they're making butter and yogurt, and these are all the wonderful things that will be coming to Siddhartha's first meal. Now, if we move to the second, I don't know, do you have any questions about this piece before we move to the second one?
Yeah, well, there's actually a wonderful comment. Maybe we'll move to the second piece while we maybe address this. Someone said,
Sure.
I always thought the tormentors were his own thoughts. Interesting. I'm actually going to publish that,
Yeah.
which I think is
Well,
kind of cool to.
That's what's coming next. So this is in the plaque.
Perfect segue.
I know that this actually is a summation of the 6 years prior to the night when he meditated without following the path of a prior teacher, but found his own path through meditation. But here he's not confronting external tormentors. He's confronting the torments of his own mind. And these are the most difficult and the most difficult obstacles to overcome. So you see him sitting here now. He is in a more comfortable meditation posture, with one hand in that posture of dhyana or meditation, and the other pointing to the ground with his fingers, because he's about to call the goddess of the earth to witness his triumph over his own inner demons. And these inner demons are personified on the outside. It's really when things are invisible and you can't see them and where they are, and you can't give them name and form, that you then can't confront them and overcome them. So in a work of art like this, which is an object of meditation, to help one realize that, yes, one's inner distractions, inner evils, inner anxieties, these can all be personified as, well, if you have lustful thoughts, there are these spectacularly beautiful, seductive girls who are coming to try to entice him away from keeping a focus on his meditations. There are these demons above with heads of beasts and holding weapons and blowing into conch shells to distract him and make him feel fearful so that he
And
doesn't proceed along this
yeah.
path.
Yeah, and he's staying the course. He's not sort of kind of seduced by those distractions. It's Sonya, thank you so much. These objects are so amazingly intricate, and it's wonderful to sort of kind of really look at these two objects, right? Just to be clear, where we went from one object of the fasting Buddha now to the second object, the temptation of Buddha by the evil forces of Mara, to really get this sort of full sort of scope of his sort of I guess, path, right?
Right.
Now, Sonya, how are these two objects, how were they used? Like what, what were they for?
So these are carved in ivory, and then they're very tiny, as I said. So they were set into wooden shrine settings. And I actually think there's one in the British Museum that still retains its original setting. The wood actually does not survive as well as ivory over the course of time. So yes, here it is. This is from the British Museum collection, where there's another ivory from the same period and the same region of Kashmir, where the way it's inset into this beautiful shrine setting that actually resonates with earlier Greco-Roman architectural types that came from the neighboring western region of Gandhara that had close trade connections during the Roman imperial period. And so this would have been set in a domestic altar, an individual personal home shrine, and it was also portable, so it could be carried on journeys. And most of the ones that survive actually did so by having been brought to places like Ladakh and Tibet and Nepal, where they survived at those high altitudes in areas that continued to be Buddhist until the present day.
Wow, amazing. It's amazing that they've lasted that long in this way. It's great to see how they would have originally been, you know how they would have originally been used and also seen, right? Now I want to remind our audience, please feel free to make comments and questions. We'll get to them in a minute or two. But Jen, I wanted to turn to you. Since these objects would have been used by in this case, a practicing Buddhist, right, during meditation, what do you take from them as a practitioner and also a teacher, right, today? What are some things that you're drawn to, whether it's in Fasting Buddha or the Temptation of Buddha?
Yeah, so great question. It's quite extraordinary. Some 1,000+ years later, I look at these objects and I see a lot of similarities with the practice even today. It's pretty extraordinary that this lastingness of this practice shows its relevancy even today. I'll point out a few things that I noticed. First of all, in both objects, the Buddha sits in what's called lotus posture, which is a traditional meditative seat. We do indeed strive to sit in that same posture today while we meditate. However, we also do express that there are more comfortable versions of the lotus posture that we can sit in today, and we do stress the comfort. We stress today that you should be able to sit comfortably for at least 10 to 20 minutes in your meditative seat, but it looks very much the same, the seat does. Additionally, also in both objects, the Buddha uses the practice of mudras. Mudra is a hand gesture. It's also considered to be an energetic seal, which supports the practice of meditation. It creates balance. Different mudras will support different parts of your practice. And so mudras are widely taught even today and widely used today. In fact, I use mudras often in my practice, even today. And then lastly, as you discussed thoroughly about the second object, Sonya, this idea of your thoughts being sort of the demons of your practice. I mean, there's sort of this myth that we have to practice and turn off our thoughts, but that's indeed not true. we cannot. We're conscious human beings. We literally cannot turn off our mind. So the practice is to sit and learn how to live and listen to these distractions, allow these distractions to be a dynamic part of your practice where you sit and focus on whatever your tool of focus is, realize, oh, there's a distraction, which may be a thought, a sound, or a physical sensation in your body. Oh, I've become distracted. Realize you've been distracted, and then come back to your focus. And so that is essentially the practice, which is so beautifully illustrated in that second object, that
Yeah.
you take these
And
rounds of sets of meditation practices, sit, distraction, come back from the distraction.
exactly. And I think that's what's so wonderful about these objects that were made as models for meditation, where
Yeah.
you can see that the model meditator who reached enlightenment through meditation had to cope with distractions too. And
Yeah.
that it's absolutely not
Yes,
something
we
to feel bad about or
face
cause one to give up. Yeah,
exactly. We all face these things, right? And I think that's a really
Absolutely.
great to think about how these remind you of the difficulties of it, right? We have a wonderful comment from Julie that I'd like to maybe share, and then maybe we could respond to it. It's not a question, but it's a great comment. The temptation of Buddha could find its modern literary corollary in the idea of the tragic flaw. It's a really sort of deep thing. Jen, do you respond to that in some ways? What are some things that you're thinking of when you hear that statement?
Well, essentially, I think that we may feel that we are flawed when we can't sit and practice quietly, that we might not be doing it correctly, that our practice is flawed because we cannot turn off our brain. And again, I think that's part of the great myth of the practice. We Our thoughts and distractions are not a flaw. It's a part of being human.
And this is a question from Kathy. And then this might be maybe a good question for you, Sonya. Is there a significance to the large scale netting covering the fasting Buddha and the Buddha in the yogic pose?
sure. I think that's talking about the first piece, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
all that netting over his body, that's a stylized rendition of sinews and veins to indicate that he has no flesh left on his body whatsoever. Is to show that he's kind of legitimate. It's really to legitimize the fact that he tried all these other extremely severe practices and he stuck with them and went through it so much so. I mean, you even see his spine coming out of his chest. I mean, this is the visual hyperbole to be able to Partha went through all of these various other courses, found them to be not helpful for him and not lead him to success. And that for him, he needed to eat a little, not too much, but have a proper meal, take care of his body. And with that, when you're not worrying about just subsistence and survival and pain, then you can then be productive in trying to overcome other more deep problems.
it looks like thank you, Sonia. That's great. We also have another question from Barbara. What kind of practitioner would have used these objects? What kind of environment was there for practice? I'm not sure. Who Sonia, do you feel
Yeah,
comfortable answering that,
so
or maybe yeah?
sure, sure.
Jen, feel free
So
to
these,
chime in afterwards.
yeah, these were luxury objects. Ivory was extremely expensive, and to have such high quality carving, it's also, it's incredibly high quality work. These would have cost a lot of money, but these would have also been made for personal use. So within the home, probably of a wealthy merchant, possibly even a king or queen. We know the queens of Kashmir were incredible donors to Buddhist sites, Buddhist monasteries, and were Buddhists themselves. This could have, we don't have any inscriptions on this, so we don't know who owned it exactly, but it is of the quality that it would have been something someone with deep pockets would have been able to afford. But giving so much to an object like this that help people on the path to enlightenment, this brings spiritual merit to them, accrues to them, and helps them also achieve a better rebirth in the future. So the fact that this was of such a high quality and expensive material, and these also would have been painted and gilded and set in those wooden shrines, shows it was in a wealthy domestic setting.
Great. It looks like we have a couple more questions, and I think maybe we'll turn to those in a moment. But can we turn to or look again at the temptation of Buddha by evil forces of Mara? Because I want to make sure that, and this is maybe a question first, I guess, for you, Jen, to answer, and then Sonia, please add too. Right, if this object here like demonstrates like the sort of practice that Buddha found really worked for him, and a lot of people have followed it, right? And even today, right? I like to think about he's found his groove, right? What do I really want us to think about what the value of this practice is for people right now, right? Jen, would you care? I know you have some thoughts about this, and then Sonia, feel free to also discuss.
Sure, thank you. I would say, the timelessness of this practice proves its value. It's been practiced for thousands of years, because it creates profound transformation towards health and well-being. And people will see that over time and just continue to turn to it as an anchor for well-being. It allows for this space of to create these comforting moments of peace and quietude, which we might normally not get in a day in our normal society, which we're so busy moving along. And that quietude and peace has been scientifically proven to actually change and improve our brain function. It calms the nervous system. It's scientifically proven to calm the nervous system. How comforting is that in a moment that we all find ourselves in, such as today? And then more on the spiritual sense too. And I like to add this, and not from a place of religion or dogma, but this idea of connectivity, of all things being connected. This practice helps us to see our own basic goodness as individuals, and that is a Buddhist term, basic goodness, and it's that which is good inside of us, which rests in myself and you and all beings. It helps us to see that within ourselves, and it helps us to see it in all beings, and also in the environment for which we live, which again creates comfort and care for ourselves and for all beings.
And looking at an object like this that helps focus one's meditation, it's made in order to help focus meditation for a practitioner. You can
Mm,
see that the Buddha, who's a model, he's not a god.
mm,
He's not going to
mm.
swoop in and eradicate your problems. He's
Yeah.
somebody who is there as a model who achieved success. And actually, right over his head is a garland bearer about to crown him, basically with a garland of flowers to celebrate his triumph. And but everybody, even he, is surrounded by this morass of problems. The world is full of problems outside in the world, inside your mind. But it's up to you to be able to not let them bother you. And it's really hard to do that.
Mm.
He's one extraordinary founder of a whole religious movement, but he's a model. And you can to see what he had to do may help one also reach whatever your goal is on your own terms.
Great.
I want, right, yeah, and Jen, you're going to kind of lead us into a practice in a moment, but maybe we have time for one more question. This is from an anonymous viewer, but I think this is a good question for you, Sonia, because it relates to things very museum specific or curatorial specific things, right? And it has to do with how these objects are named. Were these names chosen when the
Mm.
objects entered the CMA collection? I think it's a great question.
Right. These names are all given by whoever their various owners are over the course of time. And I think they've probably changed here and there. So they're not set fixed names. So fasting Buddha, that's actually a convention in the field that's based on a certain type of Buddha that only occurs really in Gandhara, which is this region that had a lot of connection with the Greco-Roman West. Actually, you don't find fasting Buddhas or emaciated Buddhas or these meditating, starving Buddhas in Indian art from peninsular India at all. It's such an inauspicious image from the perspective of an Indian viewer, the skeletal, death-like figure. But it's the literalism of the Western narrative that has exerted its influence onto this narrative, and also therefore that these all of these figures are called fasting Buddhas just ever since they were first discovered in the 19th century.
And, maybe there's one, just to, want to acknowledge people's comments. Daz, who is a middle schooler and might be representing a group of middle schoolers, are looking for some meditation resources. And actually, Daz, I believe we're going to share some at the end of the program. So do look out for those, Daz. We would please, Jen has shared, we'll share a couple a little bit later. I would like to, there's another question here from Barbara, and maybe we'll turn to the practice after that, but maybe Jen, if you could know this quickly. So we're talking about these objects from the 8th century. Barbara's question is, who are the best known teachers of Buddhism, when and where these objects were made? Do either of you know? Is there any documentation?
Yeah, so there are a lot of extraordinary monasteries that had many, many important monks and teachers. Kumarajiva. There were monks that came from Central Asia to Kashmir, to the monasteries of Kashmir at this time. So it's incredibly vibrant. There were important translators and monks and teachers that actually moved up to Ladakh and Western Tibet and were invited there by the kings of Western Tibet. So actually, some of the most important monastic leaders and teachers passed through one direction or another, the Valley of Kashmir, especially between the 8th and the 11th centuries.
Thank you, Sonya. Thank you. Now I'd like to turn it over to Jen, who's going to lead us in a short meditation around the second object that we looked at. So please, Jen, go ahead.
Yeah, and real quick, I'll share the resources that I would like to share. First is a meditation app called Insight Timer. We're going to put something in the link. It's something I use every day. It's a timer as well as lots of resources about learning to meditate. The second being The Secrets of Meditation by one of my teachers, David G. He actually talks about lots of different wisdom traditions and different types of meditations, and it's a great book for beginners and experienced practitioners. Okay, so let's have a little practice. So I'd love to, oh, perfect, the image is there, thank you. So I'll invite you to take a mudra. It's called Bhairava Mudra, and you'll have your palms facing up with the right palm resting in the left palm, and then you'll just rest your palms gently in your lap. That's optional. You can, if you're not comfortable with that, just rest your hands gently in your lap. And you'll first establish your seat. So sitting in a chair is perfectly okay. Allow the soles of your feet to rest on the floor. You can wiggle your seat down into the support of the chair. And then you'll find a little length in your spine. So just grow a little bit taller. And then relax around that form as you place your head in a neutral position. Now, you may leave your eyes open. You can softly gaze at the object on your screen, or you can gently close your eyes. Either or is fine. And then slowly begin to drop your awareness down into your body and start to connect with your breath. Allow for your breath to be natural, so developing this natural, spontaneous breath. We're not trying to control the breath in any way. And as you drop your awareness into your body, into your breath, notice where you feel the breath moving in the body. Do you feel it moving in and out of the nose? Do you feel it in the chest? Do you feel it in the belly? Just take a moment to focus in on whichever area of the body you feel the breath most predominantly at this moment. And as you connect with the breath, just begin to develop a steady presence with each breath. And allow each breath to anchor you in the present moment. And as you feel anchored now in the moment, recognize, what does it feel like to be in the present moment? And allow for whatever is there to be there, including distractions. And now that you've developed this, established yourself in the present moment, please take a moment to gently open your eyes and establish a soft gaze upon the object on your screen. And allow your eyes to gently sweep across this object. And if you're being called to fix your gaze upon something specific within the object, allow it. And as you interact with the object in this moment, begin to reflect on the following questions. What is being revealed to me as I gaze upon this object? What is the energy behind the creation of this object? Does this object feel relevant to what I'm experiencing in this moment? And then as you feel ready, release your gaze on the object and once again, close your eyes if you're comfortable with that. And now you'll join your hands, your palms together in front of your heart in a new mudra called Anjali Mudra. Gently bow your head towards your heart. Pause here. We're honoring the deep wisdom within our heart, the wisest, most kindest wisdom in ourselves. And I'd like to send you a Buddhist blessing of loving kindness. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. You can bring your head back to a neutral position, release the mudra, release your hands back to your lap. Let's take in one long, slow, deep breath in and release it. The practice is now complete. You can gently flicker your eyes open if they're closed.
Thank you so much, Jen. I'm going to do this closing in a far more relaxed fashion than I normally do, which is really great. So I want to thank you, both Jen and Sonya, for joining us. I want to thank all of you out there for joining us too. If we didn't get to your questions during the program, or if you have more, you can always go to ArtLens Ask on the CMA website, and someone will get back to you with an answer. I think we're going to post the link to there now, and we're actually looking at the sort of interface. So feel free to populate your questions there. Desktop dialogues will happen every Wednesday at noon. Next week, we're going to have curator Kristen Windmuller Luna and artist educator Orlando Caraballo discuss how artists and makers have turned to cultural objects and practices for healing. If you would like to watch this program again or share this program with a friend who missed out, check out CMA's website and YouTube channel. It should be up there quite soon. And thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.